And welcome back, folks. So we'll take it from here with Joe Magone. This is episode 79. Today we are doing another video conference type call with a really cool guest, David Zwoboda. We're going to get into it just real quick. Just wanted to say thank you so much for everyone for subscribing, for being a good fan. You know, great audience. You guys are really giving great feedback. Please, if any of these episodes provides any value to your life, please give it a share, give it a like, give it a comment, tell to your friends, tell to your mom, your grandma, grandpa. You know, they probably won't even know how to watch it or listen to it, but tell them anyway. Today, though, I'm just going to get right into the show. Episode 79, we're here with David Zwoboda, and he's going to be, he's one of the instructors on this really cool retreat that's happening in Tulum, Mexico, called Flowstate Jiu Jitsu. And basically, my understanding of it is a Jiu Jitsu / holistic ceremony type event. It's really cool, but I won't say anything else. Without further ado, welcome David to the show, and please, just let us know who you are, what you do, and a lot about the Flow State. I know you want to talk about that, and I'm pumped to learn about it.
Hell yeah, man! Thank you for that glowing intro. That was awesome. And 79 episodes, man. That's awesome. I think
it's crazy,
I'm
man.
It's 51 or something like that. So
that's right, because you have a podcast as well, right?
I do. The
Plug
Way
it in.
Broadly.
What is it?
With David Zwoboda. The Way Broadly. That's the name of it. Are you familiar with that quote from Miyamoto Musashi? Are you familiar with him, first of all?
No. What is it?
Okay. Miyamoto Musashi was a samurai. I'd be lying if I told you when he was around. I want to say maybe like 1500s or 1600s. So he was a samurai, and he was this famous swordsman. I think he won the most like single combat duels of any samurai ever. He like killed 60 men or something like that.
That's fucking.
And it's funny because people glorify him and his philosophy, and I'm like, you realize this guy's a serial killer, right? And like people are like modeling their lives off of him. So maybe take it with a grain of salt, but he's got some awesome quotes. And he was a Taoist because he was in like ancient China and everything. And so one of his quotes is that when you know the way broadly, you see it in all things, because basically he applied the ideas of swordsmanship to everything in his life. And he drew all these parallels between being a swordsman and being just a human being. And I like that quote because I think it applies to jiu-jitsu very much. The lessons that you learn from jiu-jitsu and the skills that you gain just from being around these other people and interacting with these other people, I think that they apply really well to every other aspect of life. I think that training jiu-jitsu is sort of just a microcosm of the human experience, and everything that it means to be a human is wrapped up in what it means to be a jiu-jitsu athlete. And so that was kind of the impetus of the name of the podcast. When you know the way broadly, you see it in all things. So the whole idea is to kind of find these parallels. Like I can talk to anybody and find parallels between whatever they're interested in and jiu-jitsu and whatever I'm interested in, because we're both human beings and there's going to be those parallels in everything. So that's the name of the podcast. Lately, though, it's honestly just grown into a bunch of stuff about plant medicine. Awesome. Because that's the direction my life is moving in more and more. So that's kind of become the main topics. But yeah, you hit on the jiu-jitsu retreat that I'm putting together. So it's August 11th through 17th is the one that we still have spots for. And I forget how you phrased it, but something about like a holistic sort of wellness thing. That really is the angle here. So the way that I've been talking about it is that it's the world's first plant medicine infused jiu-jitsu retreat. And so what that means is basically we're using plant medicine to work towards your mental, physical, and spiritual wellness. Because I think the mental and spiritual components often get overlooked. Everyone's in pursuit of the physical wellness. We all want to avoid injuries and do our rehab and be in good shape. But a lot of people neglect the mental health, and I would argue neglect the spiritual health, which not everyone is comfortable talking about or hearing about. But I think that honestly is kind of the cornerstone of being a well-functioning human being, is having some element of that in your life.
Absolutely. No, I agree 100%. And as someone who's picked up meditation over the past year and a half, 2 years or so, and I've been doing it on and off, I agree with you completely, because sure, physicality, like physical wellness, I always say if when you're physically well, you're mentally well, but that's just one part of it. You could be so physically well and upstairs, it's hell. And that doesn't do you any good. And the spiritual part of it, I believe, in Western society has just been overlooked for the most part, especially in the United States. For many reasons. And I think it's that New York Minute style mentality from being from the East Coast, where everything is, and there's a good thing to it, like, hey, work, execute, grow, but also you need that spiritual, like your soul sometimes is talking to you and you cannot ignore that. And I think that's why it's really cool. How are you guys implementing? I looked on your website a little bit and I familiarized myself. So essentially what's happening is Big Joey Campese, how you doing?
Yep.
He's going to be teaching the jiu-jitsu. You're going to be doing most of like all the longevity of jiu-jitsu because you are a physical therapist, right, by trade.
Yep.
And then forgive me, Cordy, I think.
Cordy. Yep.
Cordy, yeah. She's going to be doing the meditation, and I guess, is that going to be more so like, is there going to be actual like plant medicine involved in it while they're like, are people going to be rolling while like on psychedelics essentially?
So, all right. So that was actually a good breakdown. We are bringing in Joe Campese to teach. I'm only a blue belt, so I have no business running a jiu-jitsu retreat. So we're bringing him in to teach. I'm doing some mafia, physical therapy. I'm doing some PT rehabs type stuff. And then, yes, we are going to be working with plant medicine there. So what that actually is going to look like is essentially microdosing with psilocybin in the mornings. Okay. So it's an invitation to participate. So it's not mandatory. We have some people coming who are just there for the jiu-jitsu and the tacos, really. But this is the idea, is to introduce people to what it means to use plant medicine with intention and purpose. Because this is everything that my wife and I are about, is teaching people how to use these things constructively. Psychedelics are getting like a lot more attention in our culture nowadays. And there's a lot of misinformation about it. And there's a lot of people thinking that like it's a cure-all, like it's a panacea for things, and it's really not. Like they're a tool, just like anything else. A hammer is a tool. You can use it to build a house, or you can swing it and hit yourself in the dick with it. So like it's about how you use these things. So true. I hope that's okay to say on your podcast. I don't know who's listening.
Yeah,
to this.
Dude. The only rule we have here is anything you don't want to talk about. So you can curse away. I don't care.
So the idea is we're going to take a microdose together and set an intention with it and meditate together in the morning. So AM, microdose and meditate. And then we're going to roll into jiu-jitsu class from Campese. And then instead of just like rolling and training really hard at this camp, the idea is for everyone to flow roll as much as possible, because I want people to use the microdose to experience jiu-jitsu and experience their body and their mind coming together in a new way. And that's, to me, that's the whole idea of flow rolling, is exploring the avenues of jiu-jitsu, not banging your head against the wall and trying to go hard and kill somebody, but exploring what your body's capable of, exploring what your jiu-jitsu game is capable of. And just like we were saying before about the way broadly and seeing these parallels between jiu-jitsu and the rest of your life, to me, approaching it in this way, combining the meditation and the flow rolling, is going to really open people's minds to see some of these other parallels that can come into play and start to affect other areas of their life. So that's the idea in the morning. And then in the evening, we're going to have some yoga classes and some breathwork sessions and a sound healing ceremony, which will also be paired with some cannabis. So we can smoke a joint together and do some yoga, or smoke a joint and do a breathwork session. My wife is a yoga instructor, breathwork facilitator.
Oh, nice.
And we've also got a temazcal ceremony, which is a traditional Mayan sweat lodge, basically. So I'm friends with some indigenous Mayan people here, and I'm going to bring them in to facilitate this ceremony. It's like, imagine like a human-sized pizza oven, and we all crawl inside there. I know this sounds great. And there's a huge fire raging outside like all day, and they're baking these volcanic stones in the fire. And so in the middle of this pizza oven thing, it's called a temazcal. So in the middle of this thing that you're all sitting in, there's a pit in the center, and they bring in these hot stones using like a pitchfork. They pull it out of the fire and put it in the pit in the center, and they seal up the door. So it's like pitch black in there. It's almost like a sauna, like the same kind of idea of like just creating steam and heat. And it's a traditional Mayan thing though. So like it's an entire ceremony to them. So there's like, they're playing a drum, they're singing, they're chanting in like the Nahuatl language, which is like an indigenous Mayan language. Mm-hmm. And just that by itself is like a ridiculously powerful ceremony thing. If you've never done it before, it's like so uncomfortable and challenging just to stay in there the whole time because of how hot it is.
Yeah.
So that's the idea, man. It's like, it's an entire holistic wellness summit for mind, body, and soul, incorporating plant medicine and mindfulness and jiu-jitsu and tacos and Mexican sunshine and the beach and exploring Mayan ruins and swimming in cenotes, and it's going to be fucking incredible. Honestly, like I can't wait for this to happen.
It sounds amazing, dude, and honestly, it sounds genius. It was put like the structure is genius because you start off with the psilocybin, right? That little microdose going into a flow jujitsu. And if you think about that, if you can expand your mind and sort of slow down, and look, I have no experience with any of type of this like microdosing, but I'm assuming at some point maybe it sort of slows down time. And that's perfect for jujitsu because if you think about it, when you do roll jujitsu, you do like the one who wins is the one who's in control of their emotions, right? Because you could have some blue belt wrestler trying to kill you, but if you know what you're doing technique wise and you're calm, man, you'll fucking beat them every day of the week. And then what's cool about it too is afterward, now you're doing some yoga, now you're doing some meditation, you're healing the body. And that last part, I'm not gonna lie, if I was in that, I would tough it out, but I'm not claustrophobic. But when it gets hot, dude, sometimes I start to like get in my own head. So that's going to be an interesting.
That's part of it for people. Like that's part of the magic of that ceremony is like how uncomfortable and kind of scary it is. The first time I was in there, man, the first few times I made a vow to myself, like I'm not going to leave no matter what. Yeah. And I got to the point where I was pretty sure I was going to pass out from the heat. And I was like, I was trying to control my breathing. I was like feeling my pulse, and I was like, all right, David, like we gotta get control of your breathing right now. We gotta calm your heart rate down. Like, we gotta get through this. And then I had this realization of like, why are you trying to control it so much? Like, no one's ever died in this thing. Worst case scenario, I pass out, and then they like pull me out and wake me up, and everything's fine. Like, I'm not gonna die. And so I just like decided to let go and just like let whatever happened happen. And immediately, once I made that shift in my mind, I actually felt way better. And I felt like invigorated, like I had this like second wind of energy. And so yeah, I don't mean to dive into like that whole experience, but that's part of it, is just learning to like let go of trying to control how you feel and accept how uncomfortable it is, which again, tying it back to jiu-jitsu, dude, like that's the white belt experience, being in bottom mount and feeling like you're gonna suffocate. And if you want to progress in jiu-jitsu, like you accept that and you're like, this is my life now. Like I'm gonna learn how to be comfortable here. So to me, the Temazcal has a ton of benefits to a jiu-jitsu athlete, because that's what jiu-jitsu is. It's like getting comfortable with those shitty situations and learning how to actually work from there instead of just like hating it the whole time.
No, for sure. I agree with you completely. But even let's take this out like that what is called the Hamas, what's it called?
The ceremony, the Temazcal.
The Temazcal. So that too, now tying back to your way broadly statement, right? Okay, so it helps with jiu-jitsu, being comfortably uncomfortable. But how many times, and I'm currently going through this right now in life, with just life in general, how many times are we trying so hard to force an outcome? You just got to let go. You got to let go. It's like part of the meditation. Just let go. Like whatever, God, universe, whatever, the higher or the one, whatever you think it is, you got to let go to that and trust that God or whoever is going to give you what you want and need. So it's got a lot of benefits, I think. I think that letting go, I can see where you felt invigorated once you did it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah, I'm glad you see how these things all tie together, because sometimes I feel like a crazy person talking about these things.
No, dude, you're at home here.
But yeah, man, this is what I'm trying to fucking do in like the world now, is create a little bit more of a culture of this kind of shit within the jiu-jitsu world. Because I think jiu-jitsu has the potential to be the most profound spiritual thing that you do, the most profound vehicle for personal development that you can have in your life. But I don't think it's always approached that way. And if you're someone who's looking for that, and I think a lot of people who come to jiu-jitsu are seeking something. You might not be able to put it into words, but like you weren't happy with something in your life, or you wanted something more, and that led you to jiu-jitsu. Especially if you've stuck with it, you've now committed to like doing some really shitty thing. Like objectively, why the fuck do we train jiu-jitsu, dude? It makes no sense. It's terrible. But we're all obsessed with it because it's giving us something. And I don't think that's like examined enough, like consciously. I think people just show up and you have this sense that this is a good thing for me and you like it, so you keep showing up. But I think if we actually dug into that, like, what is this doing in my life? Like, how is this serving me? Why am I drawn to this?
Yeah.
If we can work with that consciously, we can make it even better. We can start to bleed over those positive effects into other areas of our life purposefully now, instead of it sort of being on accident that jiu-jitsu makes you better. We can now purposefully use jiu-jitsu to improve your mind, to improve your happiness, to improve your calmness, to improve all these things. And so again, that's like, I don't know, man. It's what I'm trying to do in the fucking world right now, is create this culture in the jiu-jitsu community. And I know that that's kind of grandiose, but to me, that's what these jiu-jitsu camps are, is a physical step in that direction. Like, this is a literal thing that's going to exist in the world that you can come participate in. And it's like planting a flag in the dirt of like, this is what we're doing, and this is why, and this is how it's benefiting us. And you guys can check out how fucking cool it looks on Instagram, and you can come next year and participate in it yourself.
No, 1000%. And you know what? You already did the hardest part. The hardest part was finding it, was getting everything together and starting it and launching it. So you've now, like you said, you've already put it out there in the universe, and now it's gonna matriculate on its own. So this is cool. I like your approach to it. And you actually answered the question I was going to ask you, is what made you want to do this? But I do agree with you that jiu-jitsu, each and every other person has their story of why they started and why they stayed. What was your reasoning for starting, and why did you stay?
Yeah, the reason for starting is I listened to Joe Rogan talk about it for long enough. I swear to God, I think that man's done more to expand jiu-jitsu than probably anyone else. But yeah, my one buddy in grad school got me into listening to the fucking Joe Rogan podcast. I listened to it for long enough, and I got interested, and I wanted to try it out. And so that was really what led me to try it. I really had no idea what to expect once I was there. But then once I was in that first class, it became immediately apparent that I was going to be obsessed with it, because it was, I mean, we all know this. It's like physical, it's problem solving, that you're solving a problem with your brain, but you are applying the solution to that problem with your physical body. And it was a unique thing for me in my life, of like that marriage of like a cerebral pursuit with a physical pursuit. And so I was hooked on that immediately. Like I could tell like it was going to take forever to develop this, because I sucked. I had zero intrinsic athletic ability as a white belt. But like I could see from the get-go, like, oh, these people are setting up like traps that I'm falling into, you know, and like it's chess. Like it's a chess game that's expressed with your body and your physical skills. So that just blew my mind, and I was immediately like hooked on it. And my appreciation for it has only grown and deepened as I've been in a position to teach other people, which I'm still like, obviously I'm not there. I'm a 2-stripe blue belt. Like I'm not qualified to teach, quote unquote, but we all know that like being good at jiu-jitsu and being good at teaching jiu-jitsu are completely distinct things.
Completely different.
And I think my background as a physical therapist actually makes me very good at teaching people jiu-jitsu, because as a physical therapist, I have to teach people exercises and movements that they are inherently bad at, right? Like if you hurt your knee or whatever, and we're working on rehab stuff, you're always going to be bad at the exact thing that your PT is trying to teach you, because that's like your deficit. So that's what you have to work on. And so my ability to communicate about physical things, like how to move your physical body, is actually really good, just because of my background as a PT. And I've found that I'm able to translate that into teaching fundamental stuff to white belts when I'm paired with them. And it's really, it's like the most fun part of jiu-jitsu for me, is helping someone else learn. And
fulfilling.
It's super fulfilling. That's kind of always been my thing. Like if I've always said this, like if I'm like 2 rungs ahead of you on a ladder, my first instinct is to like turn around and pull you up with me. So yes, I'm only a blue belt. So who can I teach? Brand new white belts. So I teach them stuff. And, you know, always like looking for coach for approval.
You're talking about.
I went back to class this morning after taking a couple months off, actually. And there was this kid there who'd only been training for 3 months. And at the end of class, I like pulled him over and showed him this mount escape that I was trying to get him to do during class. And our coach was watching, and I was like, "See, está bien?" And coach was like, "Yeah, it's good." And I was like, "All right, awesome." So
nice, yeah. Well, that's right, because you're down in Mexico. You live in Mexico, right?
I live in Mexico. Yeah. So the retreat that we're doing, it's 20 minutes up the road from my house. Like that's why we chose this location. Yeah,
that's so sick. But dude, that's like, I'm sorry to interrupt, but like I know what you mean. Like not that I teach, but sometimes there are things that I'm comfortable teaching. And it's always in a situation where if you're letting someone work who's definitely new and you're like trying to get them to like, come on, man, just fucking overhook on the arm, hook on the
put your
foot,
knee here.
come through. And it's cool though. It's nice. And you want to know what? When you do that, they appreciate it. And then they're going to come back and they're going to try to fight. And then that makes you better.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was back at Silver Fox in Saddlebrook in the morning classes. I was always the guy who was paired with like the brand new guy in like the starter gi, you know? And I loved that because to me it meant that the coach trusted me and he knew that I was going to be a good training partner for that kid. Because like you can definitely be the reason that someone doesn't come back to jiu-jitsu after their first class. Or you can be the reason that somebody falls in love with jiu-jitsu and trains it for the rest of their life. So like that's who I want to be. I want to be the guy that someone gets paired with and they go home. They're like, man, that was such a good class. I'm so glad that I worked with that guy. Like that's always my mindset.
No, absolutely. And it is important, man, because there is that like that fine line, man. There's that fine line of attraction and you can either kill it or not. But dude, I mean, like, I think like, cause there's so many good things that you said there. Because it's like that whole constant, like what is it about jiu-jitsu that keeps us coming back? Sometimes I ask myself the same thing because the reason why I started and the reason why I'm staying is it's not really congruent. I started because I was like, you know what? I don't know how to defend myself. So I feel like I need to learn how to defend myself. And that's the reason why I train every day.
Yeah, now you realize you really don't know how to defend yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Because then you start going with people who are better than you, and then you're like, "Have I been training for 3 years? Like, what the hell is going on?"
You get mauled by somebody, and you're like, "Wow, I am worthless still." Cool.
Yeah, dude. How many times during a roll, if you're going with someone who's better and they're on top of you, and you're like, "Dude, if this is real life, man, I would be fucked." Dude.
Oh, 100%.
Oh man, it's great.
Good. Are you? No. What level are you? Are you purple belt, blue belt?
No, I'm blue.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm blue. I'm still blue. It's been so much. I think blue has been my favorite belt. Well, I've only done 2 belts, and I enjoyed white. Yeah, been my favorite belt of 2. White belt was fun for me. Yeah, right. Yeah, but like white belt was fun because white belt, man, the very first day I got absolutely steamrolled because I was like going no gi and I was going with people I didn't know their level, right? So people were fucking me up, dude. And and then I would return to class in gi and I'd be like, oh, he was a brown belt. Oh, he was a fucking purple belt. Okay.
You feel so much better when you see that, right? Like, oh good, that guy was a brown belt. Oh, thank God.
yeah, dude. The best is when you're like at an open mat and someone absolutely ruins your life. And for whatever reason, you're like, dude, I hope that guy's not a fucking white belt. Then they come back and they're a black belt. You're like, oh, all right, cool, good. Good, thank God.
Absolutely.
But no, blue is so much fun because blue, like I said, blue belt mafia, man. It's like you get these guys who come in, they're like, you're still trying to like fuck people up, but you're getting better and you're getting more skilled and you're calm. You're not that spazzy white belt. But you're still getting your ass beat by the purples, the browns, and the blacks. And that's how it is. Oh, yeah. And that's a good lesson too. Just like the, like you said, the constant beatings that you're taking and then that nice little sauna thing you're going to do, bro. Life sometimes sucks. It's beautiful, but sometimes you get put into shitty situations and everyone has a different shitty situation on some level. And you could either fucking swim or sink. And that's why I think jiu-jitsu is perfect because sometimes you're constantly seeking, but if you can come back, and then you start to swim. You start to learn doggy paddle. Then you're fucking doing strokes. Then you're doing fucking freestyles. And then you're Michael Phelps, right? That's like life, dude.
I think it starts with just making that choice, like, to swim. Because you said sometimes life is hard. Life is, like, nothing but hard all the time. Like, everything is challenging all the time just to survive from, like, an animalistic point of view. Like, surviving is just not easy. And being a human's not easy. It's a constant onslaught of bullshit being a human being in the modern world. And that onslaught of bullshit is there no matter what. So you can make the choice to swim with the tide or try to learn to swim with the tide at least, or just fucking flounder and be a miserable human being because everything sucks in your life and you're not trying to make any sort of progress. So I don't know, dude. I think every man, woman, and child needs to train jiu-jitsu. And I think it would make the world a much better place if they did.
1,000%. And I actually was having a conversation with someone about this. the new generation of kids between the ages of 5 and 10 and 12, you see it. It's blowing up jiu-jitsu. Think about the effects, the positive effects that can have if they continue it. Not only are they going to be confident, not only are they going to be able to defend themselves, but knowing, like when you know how to break someone's arm, you know not to go out and seek to break someone's arm. Because if you find someone who's better than you, you're going to get your arm broken. And think about that. There's going to be what's up?
On the flip side of that, like everyone's suspicious of everyone else training. So it's like you don't know who's a black belt. So maybe you're a purple belt and you think you can handle yourself, and then you still get fucked up.
Yeah, exactly, dude. And that's what it does. It makes society calmer, makes society respectful. And I think I agree with you what you said. Jiu-jitsu has the potential to be one of the most inspirational martial arts ever. And I think it will be because it's blowing up, man. It blew up ever since 2020. Blew up.
It's going back to that idea of like if everyone trained. I was in New York City recently. I saw you at Pure because I was home to visit family, and I went to the city with my sister, and we were on a subway, and I feel so uneasy. I feel so uneasy in New York in general, especially on the subway. I'm like fucking on high alert. Mm-hmm. And this dude walks onto the subway, and he's got 2 massive cauliflower ears. And I felt immediately better. I was like, cool. Like nothing's going down like right here. Like I'm good. Like I got someone else who gets it near me, you know?
Exactly. And it's like you have like that internal bond. You're like, all right, we'll fuck them up. No, for sure. Yeah, man. That's huge. One question though, I want to sort of, so we spoke about the jiu-jitsu. I want to talk to you about like spirituality, if you don't mind, because
let's fucking do it.
Dude, recently in the past year and a half, going on maybe 2 years, I've been reading a lot of Dispenza. I've been reading a lot of the law of attraction. So basically quantum reality, quantum physics. I've listened to this guy on YouTube named Aaron Doughty. He's great. And like Dyer, I think it's Richard Dyer, or I forgot his name, the first name.
I'm not familiar.
But it's all about the spirit and the soul, right? And I look at it also as like manifestation too, being able to visualize what you want and then executing and get into that state, right? And the one thing that I sort of equate it all back to that spirit. It's our souls. There's something to that, right? Like you said it before, you could be a flounder and just sink and then life can suck, right? You know that expression soul sucking? There's a reason why. It's almost like you're sucking all the potential out of your soul. So when you do a lot of these retreats, I know you're familiar with ayahuasca, correct? You don't you?
Yes, intimately so. So I lead ayahuasca retreats in Peru.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I've heard a lot of great things about ayahuasca. Is that like almost going into your like soul? Like what is it? Like what do you think all of these things, like, I don't know if you're probably familiar with Dispenza and all that, the quantum. Does that like, what does that mean to you?
All right. Well, maybe we can take a step back first, if that's okay.
Yep. Sure thing.
When you're talking about like the soul and like the quantum field and all of these things, my understanding of reality is basically that those kinds of things, that's what's actually real. The chair that I'm sitting on, this house that I'm sitting in, like this stuff is illusion. This stuff is not real. So anything that's happening on like the level of the soul or the level of God is what reality actually is. And everything that we see is just some emanation of it or some reflection of it or some fake like virtual reality type thing. So are you familiar with the book, the Bhagavad Gita? Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of it through Phil McIntyre.
Okay. Yes. Cool. So Phil's the one who got me into this shit. But the Bhagavad Gita is a central text of Hinduism. It's like, if you want to draw an analogy, it's like the Bible of Hinduism.
Sure.
And it talks basically about this. It's a conversation between God and the main character. His name is Arjuna. And God is basically telling him how the world, how the universe works. He's kind of like peeling back these layers and giving him this true sight to see how things actually are. And in doing so is like imparting all of these lessons to help Arjuna understand the struggles of his life that we all go through and why he has to do all these things that we have to do as humans. So anyway, that is, to me, that shit is real. And our little human life, this is bullshit. our soul is inhabiting this physical body for a very short period of time, probably to like learn some lessons that our soul needed to learn. And then when our physical body dies, it's just like taking off an old shoe. Like it's no big deal. Our soul continues on. I don't know where it goes, but our soul continues on. Maybe it comes back into another physical body on Earth to learn some more shit. Maybe it goes to some other dimension. I don't know. But that's my sort of operating level with all of this stuff.
Got it.
And so you asked me about ayahuasca, and I kind of forget what your actual question was.
So the question was like, is that like actually going into your soul or going into the spirit, or is that like, am I completely off?
So what I think about ayahuasca is that it's different from other psychedelics. So things like LSD or mushrooms, the term psychedelic, it actually means mind manifesting if you look at like the Greek root words of it, because essentially it creates an experience for you that's a manifestation of whatever shit is already inside your brain. And that's why people talk about set and setting, the idea being like, put yourself in a safe environment, that's the setting, and get yourself in a good mindset before you go and do these things. Because if you're full of anxieties and fear and worry, you're going to have an experience that's full of anxiety and fear and worry, and you're probably going to think that you're going to die. And that's what people term like a bad trip, is when something like that happens. So LSD and mushrooms and stuff like that, I think that that kind of goes into your own brain. Like it allows you to explore your own psyche and just kind of see what's in there. To me, ayahuasca is different. To me, ayahuasca has an intelligence, and it has a consciousness, and it has a spirit of its own. And when you work with ayahuasca, the idea is that you're actually working with this master spirit of this plant that can help you to heal shit that's wrong with you. It can help you to learn lessons about your life. It can help you to heal all this trauma that maybe you've had stored inside of you. But to me, like, it's different in that regard, that it's not just a manifestation of whatever's already in your mind. You're actually communicating and working with some sort of intelligent entity. Almost, honestly, like, yeah, exactly. Mother ayahuasca. That's why it's always referred to like that. It's almost like meeting an alien intelligence. And I know that sounds weird, but that's been my experience, and that's what I've learned from my teachers. So it's important to note that, like, I don't serve people ayahuasca. We work with an indigenous family down in Peru. They're from the Shipibo tribe. Yeah. And so I basically organize the logistics. I take a group of people down there. I help them prepare for it. And then I translate for the maestros while we're there, because they don't speak English. So I translate for everybody. So this has been my experience, and that's been like what I've learned from them.
Dude, that's so sick. Like that makes that sounds like cool. Like if you're willing to work, she's going to work with you. Right. And you
absolutely.
Damn. I'm going back to before, what you were talking about is your perception of reality. I think you would love this book called Many Lives, Many Masters.
I do love that book. I read it last time I was in Peru, actually. That's nice. Funny.
Dude, it talked about exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Literally.
Everything that book talks about, I 100% buy that. I completely think that that's true.
How many times have you met someone that you thought, like, because then that brings into another, like how many times have you been like friends with someone, maybe girlfriend, who knows? And all of a sudden you're like, dude, I know you. I feel like I know you before. And it's like souls travel in pods.
All right. So I've never had the feeling that I knew someone before. Like I never met someone who's like, oh, we were friends in a past life. But the best way I could describe it, this sounds silly, but like, you know, if you've ever played like a video game and like where you're on a quest, like looking for some object or something, or you're like in a room and you're like looking for a key or something like that. And then the video game has like a little sparkle over where the item is that you're supposed to be looking for, just so it stands out just a little bit. That's almost what it's been like when I meet certain people. And it's like, for some reason, I like will lock eyes with them, or like I'll be in the same room with them and just kind of like my attention's drawn to them and I can't explain why. And then that person ends up being like a significant person in my life. Like that has happened to me for sure, many times.
That's crazy. I love that. And crazy in a good way.
Yeah. I mean, that was, I met my wife at an ayahuasca retreat.
Oh, no way.
I don't know if, yeah. The first time that I did it, I went to Soltara, which is in Costa Rica. It was actually because Silver Fox had a Costa Rica Jiu Jitsu camp. And so I went to this Costa Rica Jiu Jitsu camp. And then the last day of the camp, I was like the first day of this ayahuasca retreat. And so all the other people for the ayahuasca retreat met at the airport, and Cordy was working for Soltara. So she went and like picked everyone up from the airport and took them back to the center. She like coordinated that. And because I was already in the country, I met them halfway, like at this ferry that we took. And that's what it was like meeting her. And yeah, I mean, here we are. We're actually having a kid soon.
Oh, no way. Congratulations. That's fucking awesome.
Thank you. So yeah, the book Many Lives, Many Masters, like I've been thinking about that kind of stuff a lot as it pertains to having a kid. Like I think that child's soul chose us to be its parents for whatever reason, to fulfill some sort of karmic debt that I have, or to fulfill something that it has, and it needs me to be its dad to learn certain lessons.
Yep.
I think, not to like toot my own horn, but I think I'm a pretty good person to be born into my like household, because like we're already like on this spiritual like wavelength. So kid growing up among this stuff, it's going to be that much closer to its spiritual path than it would be if it grew up in a house where the parents didn't have any spirituality. So
no, absolutely. Because the book describes it as like souls are on different levels, and it's just about achieving like the one, or being one with God.
And
but
just one other quick note, like that book has actually helped me to find a lot of solace in things that seem like really, really tragic. So I've had a couple friends now, actually, like because we're getting pregnant, we're talking to people, like I've had a couple friends who had miscarriages. And that book talks about his son, the author's son, like died when he was like 4 days old or whatever. And his death fulfilled some karmic debt that the father had. And think about how many lessons and the emotional like level up that would occur from something like that happening. Like it's so tragic, but I'm sure you learn so much from that experience. And so it's helped me to just kind of find solace in like tragic things. I do believe that like everything works out exactly as it's supposed to at all times. Like the way that things are unfolding in your life is perfect. It couldn't possibly be any other way than it is right now. And it's I don't know, I take a lot of solace in that. Anytime that there's some sort of struggle or hardship, like I trust that everything is unfolding precisely how it is meant to at every moment, no matter what.
Yeah, that's very important. And especially I got chills when you said that, because like if you believe in what we're talking about, you essentially, God's got the plan, and the plan is going to be exactly what it needs to be. But sometimes it's just, and this is where the ego comes in, sometimes it's just hard to accept that this is why something needed to go this way. And you never know what the future holds. But like you said, it's on the right path. And like it is comforting, but at the same time, when you're going through what you're going through, it's like, shit, dude, like, it's like, fuck, why can't it just be this way? And it's like, well, it can't, because it's going to be even better.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And and that's where the letting go thing comes back in also, when things are that shitty. Just kind of throwing up your hands and being like, all right, I guess this is the way that it's supposed to be. Like, I'm going to continue doing my best. I'm going to continue like swimming, right? Paddling the boat. I'm not going to just give up altogether, but like, I'm going to give up control of this situation because it's out of my control.
Yeah, that's important. That is hugely important. And actually, I read his other book, Same Soul, Many Bodies. It's the one afterward.
I didn't know there was a sequel. I've never heard of that.
I think there's 3 sequels, and that's a really good one. He goes through because he started regressing other patients that he deemed needed regression. He doesn't regress all of his patients. But then he also started doing progression. And progression, he doesn't know if it's actually the future or what this person's projecting. But regardless, he basically describes it as if the souls on Earth can do well, like people will see different futures, and the futures are going to be like as good as they are is going to be depends on what everyone does right now in the present, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And I was thinking about this just now as you were talking. What if jiu-jitsu is now going to be the one big thing that everyone does that puts us into a better future, even thousands of years from now?
Could be, man. It definitely could be, because I'm there's a quote from Ram Dass. You familiar with Ram Dass?
No, who's that?
Oh, brother. Oh my gosh. All right. Ram Dass is a spiritual teacher from the 70s. His real name is Richard Alpert. He was a professor of psychology at Harvard. And
Mm-hmm.
then Timothy Leary gave him mushrooms. And then he basically abandoned his life as a Harvard professor, moved to India for a while, followed this guru in India, came back to America, became this like spiritual teacher. He's the kind of guy who like could have been a cult leader very easily if he wanted to, but he was actually, I don't know, I don't want to call him enlightened, but he was on that path. He was an
Yeah.
amazing guy. There's all of these lectures of him that exist. It's actually a podcast on Spotify where people comb through these records of his lectures. It's incredible. The last time I did 5 grams of mushrooms, I had a clear vision of Ram Dass's face right over me, and I couldn't stop smiling. I love this guy so much, man. I cry sometimes when I look at pictures of Ram Dass because of how his words have affected me.
Okay.
So
Nice.
where the fuck was I going with this? Right. So he has a quote. He says, "The best thing that you can do for me is to work on yourself. And the best thing that I can do for you is to work on myself."
I literally just heard this while leaving jiu-jitsu today from a YouTube video that had nothing to do with spirituality. Can you repeat that for our listeners?
The best thing that you can do for me is to work on yourself, and the best thing I can do for you is to work on myself. So yesterday I did a podcast with these other 2 guys, and I was telling them about like my nonprofit that helps these indigenous people in Peru. And they were like, "How can people contribute?" And I was like, "Yeah, like you can donate to that, sure. But if you actually want to help the world, like start working on yourself in some way. Start meditating, start journaling, start jiu-jitsu." These tiny things that seem insignificant because, oh, it's just me sitting down for 10 minutes. Like that is making the entire universe a better place because you have made yourself a better place to be inside of. And like, I don't know, there's all these like pithy quotes like, you know, you are not a drop in the ocean, you're the whole ocean in a drop, like all this bullshit. It's just like nice quotes. But I think it's true, man. Like you working on yourself is making the entire universe a better place. So start there.
It's so true. And it's almost as if like for relationship, right? If you're not
100%.
happy with yourself, if you're not happy by yourself internally, no external factor, person, or thing is going to make you permanently happy. It may give you some happiness in a few months, but then that'll go away. It's the same thing.
Not. Yeah. This is like to dig into the weeds a little bit of like what we actually do with people to help them. That's a big thing that we see is like people with these patterns of abusive relationships, especially women choosing like an abusive partner. It's fucked up because like the cycle continues to repeat and repeat and repeat because they're choosing someone that they think that they deserve. So if you think that you are a piece of shit, you are going to find someone who treats you like a piece of shit because that affirms your belief in your head. Like, oh yes, I must be a piece of shit because that's how this person's treating me.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you chose them because that's coming from inside of you. So in order to improve your relationships, you must improve your relationship with yourself. Your relationship to another person will never be healthier than your relationship to yourself is. It all starts there. It starts with that belief. And I mean, it ties into manifestation, right? Of like what I believe in my internal environment, I'm making real in my external environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can go on about this shit for hours, but
oh, dude, so can I, bro. It's fucking, I love it. And I love it. And you want to know what? It's something that I think needs to be taught in our world. And I always take conspiratorial routes. I love it.
Oh, fuck yeah.
I think higher ups, and I mean the ones that are the highest of the highest that rule the world, essentially, right? And I'm not talking about governments. I'm talking about the richest. I think they know this already. And they purposely don't tell us and then make you seem crazy if you talk about it. Because if you think about it, if everyone had this knowledge, this world would be so peaceful.
So this is there's a guy named Brian Muraresku who wrote this book called The Immortality Key, which I'll be honest, I haven't read the book, but I've heard him talk about it on a bunch of podcasts. His research is all about the ancient Greek practices of using psychedelics. And it's really cool because this guy's actually never done psychedelics himself. So like a lot of people talking about drugs and stuff, it's like, oh, you're a crazy hippie. This guy's like a Harvard professor or something who's never touched a drug. He just does research on ancient Greece. And he talks about how they had these rituals and rites in their society that were facilitated, if you will, to use like kind of our modern term, these practices were preserved by this class of people who, you know, introduced people to these medicines. They introduced people to psychedelics. And, you know, kings would go to this island to do these ceremonies, like politicians and stuff. These noble people would go to these ceremonies to experience psychedelics in this intentional, structured way. When the church came in like the Roman Empire, that shit was one of the first things to go, because they didn't want people having this sort of knowledge. They didn't want people having this direct connection to divinity, because the church wanted to be the intermediary between you and God so that they would have more control over you. But I think a lot of our issues as a society can be traced back to the destruction of that practice in society, and the lack of these people who, I don't want to say are like the gatekeepers of it, because that implies like keeping people out, but the people who facilitate these ceremonies in a safe and constructive and intentional way. And the more I think about it, the more I actually see that as kind of the role that I'm trying to play in the world, of being like a conduit for people to make a connection to these plant medicines, make a connection to experiencing divinity on a personal level through these plant medicine practices. And so yeah, man, pretty much just trying to save humanity over here through mushrooms.
Fuck yeah.
No big deal.
Dude, saving humanity through plant-based medicine and heel hooks and fucking ankle locks.
Yeah, man.
Dude, to get back to the flow state, the ceremony.
Yeah.
Give us a little bit more details. Like you said, the 11th to the 14th of August, right? The 3rd to the 10th is already sold out.
3rd through 10th is sold out. 11th through the 17th, there's spaces for. It's in Tulum, Mexico. What else do you want to know? What should we talk about?
I want to know, do people need to know any jiu-jitsu to come here, or can it be a brand new white belt that's never touched the mat before?
No, you could absolutely be a brand new person. I would love to have a brand new person there. You also don't have to have any sort of like spiritual practice. You don't have to have any experience with this stuff. Again, like if this isn't even your cup of tea, just fucking come for the jiu-jitsu and the sunshine and stuff. Like that's fine too. But yeah, man, it's open to anybody. We actually have in October, we have the same exact retreat, but it's put on exclusively for veterans and first responders.
Oh, no shit. That's awesome.
Yeah. So we have, instead of Campese teaching that one, a friend of mine named Seb Lavoie, who's a Canadian black belt, and he did like 20 years in Canadian Special Forces police work. So he's going to be the guy who comes in to teach that.
Let's go. That's badass.
Yeah, that's gonna be fucking cool, because my wife and I like more and more have been working with veterans with this stuff. Because the jiu-jitsu retreats is one thing. We have our ayahuasca retreats, and we also have a microdosing program to teach people how to get into microdosing. And we're doing a seminar or like a webinar in a couple days on that, and we're going to enroll another group of all veterans and first responders and their spouses to teach them how to microdose to manage PTSD and TBI. But yeah, man, so the jiu-jitsu retreat, like come for the jiu-jitsu, come for the sunshine, come for the meditation and the yoga. You don't have to do mushrooms and smoke weed. That's there for you if you want to experience this stuff. Because again, man, my goal is to like introduce people to these things in a constructive way. Because maybe you've heard Joe Rogan talk about smoking DMT, or like you know somebody who like microdoses, but like this information is kind of hard to get. It's hard to get good information. It's hard to know who to trust and like what these things should look like. It's easy to be swindled. It's hard to know like who's a safe person to do this stuff with, especially for women. Like there's unfortunately a huge amount of like sexual abuse and sexual assault that happens in the plant medicine world, because people are in such like a vulnerable state, and there's shitty people out there, just like there's shitty black belts. Like we like to think that every black belt's a good person. Some of them are fucking child predators. So similarly, like you'd like to think that anyone facilitating a plant medicine ceremony is a good person. Some of those people are not good people. So that's my whole goal here, is to introduce people to these things, to kind of show them what's out there, and to do it in a fun environment, to do it alongside jiu-jitsu. And then of course, like we're having fun. We're in Mexico. We're going to go explore Mayan ruins, you know, enjoy the culture, all that kind of stuff. But that's the idea, man, is to introduce people to this stuff, because I think the world needs more of it. It's no secret that our world is in fucking shambles right now, and our society is sick, and we need something.
Absolutely.
And I think that it's undeniable to me, like the changes that plant medicine has had in people. And if you want, I could even share a couple stories of like people that
Yeah.
have come to do ayahuasca with us.
Let's
but
go.
like people need this shit, dude. Take a sip of my beverage here. But yeah, man, the last trip that we went on, it was crazy. So when we do these retreats, like I said, my wife and I organize the logistics. We get a group of folks together. We travel to Pucallpa, Peru. So a lot of people go to Peru and they go to Iquitos, which is in the north. That's kind of more like, it's almost like commercial shamanism. Like it's become like a whole industry up there. It's like a tourist ayahuasca industry, which is fine. Like if that's what you want. But we go to Pucallpa, which is like a very remote city. Mm-hmm. And then from Pucallpa, from the city, we take a car 30 minutes down these dirt roads to a laguna. And then we take a boat half an hour across the laguna into like the middle of the fucking jungle. And that's where it's pretty crazy. It's like a National Geographic episode just getting there. A couple of years ago, the laguna, because we go... Peru has a real long rainy season, and you don't want to be in the jungle when it rains. It's awful. So we go like right after the rainy season ends, and then like right before the rainy season's about to start. And so the last time, or 2 times ago, it was like the end of the dry season, so the water level was really low. So the boat kept getting tangled in like the weeds and everything in the laguna.
No way.
And so there's a really cool picture of me. I should find it and put it on my Instagram. It's like a picture of me pushing the boat with like a stick next to like the shaman, the maestro. And I'm like wearing like a Columbia shirt. Like it looks like something out of National Geographic. It's pretty cool. But anyway, so the center that we go to, super remote, it's owned and operated by an indigenous family, which is really, really special. It's really important to me that it's this way. So the place Soltara that I mentioned, it's owned by a board of shareholders who are all Canadian people. And it's like a for-profit corporation, which I'm not against that. Like capitalism's a good thing. But that means at the end of the day, decisions get made to protect the interests of the company, to limit their liability, right? So when you're there, you don't get to interact with the shamans at all. And by the way, they actually call themselves maestros. Maestro means like teacher. So they call themselves maestros instead of shamans, really. But I sometimes use the word shaman because everyone understands what I mean when I say that. Yep. So you don't really get to interact with them at all when you're at Soltara, versus at our center, it's called Ronin Huinti, which translates to the heart of the anaconda. That's the name of the center. When you're there, you're basically like living with this indigenous family, and they're taking care of you. They're cooking you breakfast and lunch every day. They are tending to your bug bites. Like the woman who serves you ayahuasca is the same woman who's going to like treat your bug bites in the morning from the mosquitoes.
That's so sick.
You get to talk to them like as much as you want, which is really cool for me as the translator. It's almost like being the uke for like a lesson. You get to like learn from everyone else's questions, right? So like if you want to communicate with her, you're going through me, which means I get to benefit from the answer to your question. Yeah. So I'm just there like soaking up wisdom from these people the whole time, which is incredible.
Love it.
And man, just real quick, going back to the Bhagavad Gita, there's like kind of an idea in there that if you're living your life correctly, if you're living your dharma, to use that term, you're basically like your life is an expression of God through your body as a physical vessel on this plane, right? And for me, as I'm translating for the maestros, it's literally like they're using my voice to communicate with you. So I'm like literally a vessel through which this information and wisdom is like being disseminated, which is, I don't know, it's kind of crazy for me. But,
it is nice.
Yeah. All right. I'm sorry, man. I'm getting sidetracked because I could talk all about this shit. But this one guy that we brought down to Peru last time, this is the story I was trying to tell. His name's Toby. He was a Canadian Special Forces veteran. He did 3 tours in Afghanistan.
Oh, wow.
On his last tour, it's on his 40th birthday, actually. He goes out on a patrol, and his best friend steps on an IED, and it's like 5 feet away from Toby. And so his best friend loses both of his legs, and Toby gets like a blast injury, like a TBI from it, and all this other like medical stuff. But Toby didn't lose any limbs or anything. Toby actually has this fragments of this guy's leg bones embedded in his body as shrapnel from the blast, which is like a mind fuck by itself. So he medically retires because of that. all these years go by. That friend who stepped on the IED actually like killed himself, and now Toby has pieces of this guy like in him, so that weighs on him every fucking day. And throughout these years, Toby's gone through like every form of therapy for his PTSD. He's on 26 different pills a day at one point, literally trying everything. And like his life is still kind of in shambles, and drinking a ton, violent, angry outbursts, which is obviously putting a strain on his relationship with his wife, who was also a veteran actually, but she was not like a combat veteran. She was in intelligence. And so we work with this guy for 6 months prior to going to Peru, because if you're on antidepressant medication, it's actually really dangerous to do ayahuasca. It's like a hard no. Like you cannot drink ayahuasca if you're on antidepressants.
Would you have a bad trip or?
No, you could have something that's called serotonin syndrome from too much serotonin in your brain, which can actually be life-threatening.
Shit.
It can cause like your heart to stop and your like breathing to stop. So like it's a super hard no. Like you cannot look, like you can find places that will take you. It's a super fucking hard no for me. If you're on antidepressants, you're not coming to Peru with me. It's a liability. Yeah, it's dangerous.
Absolutely.
But we work with people to come off of it. So Toby was on basically like the maximum dose you could give someone without fucking killing them. He was on 400 milligrams a day of the shit. And over the course of 6 months, we worked with him to use microdosing psilocybin to wean off of his drugs. So when you're on SSRIs, it's actually really hard to come off of it. There's like withdrawal symptoms. So like you can't quit cold turkey. Like you'll get headaches, you'll get brain fog. He had auditory hallucinations when he came off of it. Like he was hearing things that weren't there because it fucks with your neurochemistry so much, man. Yeah. Getting off of these things is a nightmare that doctors don't tell you about.
Oh, no. I'm just real quickly. I don't know if you've ever heard of the guy named Andy Frisella. He's the founder of First Form. He talks about this on his podcast, how he got off of antidepressant medication. And he said it was the worst, like 4 months of his life. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were able to use microdosing to actually help to mitigate some of those symptoms with him. Mm-hmm. And we also used it. When I say like our microdosing program, it's not just here's some mushrooms, like eat them and hope for the best. It's like a structured program of teaching you how to work with it, teaching you how to set intentions, and redefining your habits. So getting his sleep cleaned up, starting journaling, starting meditation, like this entire process of introspection to basically like start to turn your life around just with the mushrooms. So over the course of 6 months, most of his symptoms improved like at least 50% in terms of like his violent outbursts, his drinking cut back substantially. He was having fewer nightmares. He still had nightmares, but it was down from maybe like 5 of them a week to like 1 of them a week.
Wow.
And we got him completely off of the SSRIs in anticipation of going to Peru.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we take him down to the jungle and we do 5 nights of ceremony over the course of 7 days. So we spend a week in the jungle and you drink ayahuasca 5 nights. And I heard him just recently on a podcast that he was on, this like Canadian military podcast. And he was talking about the changes that occurred from drinking ayahuasca. And he said previously, every day he would be filled with this like anger and violence and rage that just needed an outlet. And sometimes that outlet was his wife, and sometimes it was a waitress, and sometimes it was the toaster oven that he would beat the shit out of. And yeah, so he said before, like years ago, there wasn't a single wall in his house that didn't have a hole in it because he would punch through the fucking walls constantly. Yeah, he was a very violent person. And that caused him to drink, and then that caused him to hate himself more and caused him to be more violent, like we were saying before. And so he said 30 days after drinking the ayahuasca, every day he'd been looking inside of himself to find that rage because he was waiting for it to come back. And he would be looking inside of himself and he couldn't find it anymore. There was just nothing. There was peace. He was like actually happy for the first time. And he said, basically after a month of looking for it, he's like, I think I'm going to stop trying to find that rage again and just accept that my life is pretty peaceful now. And that was one of his intentions that we came up with during the preparation phase for going to sit with the medicine. You try to come up with these intentions of like, what am I trying to get out of this? And that was one of his biggest things, was like he just wanted to feel at peace. Like he didn't want to look for a fight anymore. He didn't want to, have to sit in a restaurant with his back to the wall because he was anticipating someone to come in there and shoot at him, Like he wanted to just accept that he was safe and
Mm-hmm.
he just had a granddaughter, and he was like, I know how much I fucked up being a parent because I was going through all of this shit, and I want to be able to be a better grandparent now. So yeah, this guy's life is like completely changed because of this entire process, which is like the most rewarding fucking thing in the world for me to see. It's incredible.
Yeah, that is really fucking cool. Because if you think about it, it just goes to show you how much the system is fucking a lot of people, and
Oh my
that the
God.
answer is literally always going to be inside. So why not take something that has come from the earth in itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of plants, like poisonous plants out there, got it. But this is coming from the earth. We came from God that created the earth, right? Or we came from the earth, however you want to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like that, what's the word I'm looking for? Is it correct for me to say symbiotic relationship?
Absolutely.
With it?
I would say so. Yeah.
And to bring someone at
Even
peace is
with the
incredible.
Amazon too, like so many of our pharmaceutical medications are derived from compounds that were isolated from plants in the Amazon.
Oh shit! I did not know that.
Yeah, dude. Something like 70% of like synthesized pharmaceuticals have their base in chemicals and compounds that were isolated from plants in the Amazon.
Imagine if they just fucking kept it that way.
Yeah, well, yeah, just go take the fucking plant, you know. But there's not enough profit in that, you know.
Exactly.
You can't make billions of dollars that way,
dude. Yeah, so, I've that's interesting. Like, I know you sent me the thing. I never pulled the trigger on it. I do sort of want to try ayahuasca. I don't think in the near future, but I want to try it because there's some questions that I'm not saying like I have like the story you told about Toby, like nowhere near that, right? But there are some things that I question about myself a lot of the times, and I want to know where it's coming from. And there are some times where I give myself the answer, but I sort of want to go inside. That's why I meditate a lot. I try to see, because I try to want to like hear. I feel like if you get to a point where you're meditating a lot, you'll get an answer, and I'm searching for that answer.
I think first of all, it's important to note that like the stories of veterans are easy to talk about and share because like everyone respects them, and it's like this extreme case, you know?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that this shit is only for people like that. Like the trauma that we all have in our lives, like it's not a dick measuring contest of like who had more trauma. So like whatever shit you're dealing with, the worst thing that ever happened to you is still the worst thing that ever happened to you. Maybe it's not as like quote unquote bad as stepping on an IED in Afghanistan, but if that's the worst thing that happened to him, it's no worse than the worst thing that happened to me because it's all relative. Yeah. And so I hear what you're saying. I also definitely respect and agree with you that like it can be something in the future. Like you don't need to go do ayahuasca. Like it really shouldn't be necessarily the first step for a lot of people. Some people start there. Like I've worked with people who have never done psychedelics before and went and did ayahuasca. But I think there's a lot to be gained from just starting where you are, which is the meditation. I'd be curious to hear if you like journal at all or if you have any practice around that. But
I've not. I need to. I've read a lot of stuff about journaling. I have not. I have written down like boards, but on pieces of papers of stuff that I want or people that I want to manifest, but I've actually never journaled.
Well, what you said is like as you're meditating, right? You're clearing your mind, you're making this space in your mind, and you've noticed that sometimes an answer will make its way in there because the way that I see it, our brains are a receiver for this consciousness that exists outside of our physical brain. And I think if your brain is too clogged and cluttered up with bullshit, you're not going to be able to receive messages coming in from outside. And I think that that's what meditation does is it sort of clears these things away. It lets the water settle, so to speak, so that you can be receptive to shit coming in from outside. So journaling, I think, it's another way to access that where you can be writing. Maybe this is kind of what I would recommend is like take a blank sheet of paper, if you have like a notebook or a journal, that's even better because then it's kind of like a special place for it. But take a blank sheet of paper, write a question at the top or a prompt at the top. And that could be something like, what is it in my life that I don't want to look at right now? Or like what behaviors do I exhibit that are not serving my highest self? Or what would my life be like if I were doing everything I knew I ought to be doing? Or, something like that. Some sort of open-ended question that's going to prompt you to reflect on this shit. And then just like meditation, where maybe you set a timer and you sit there and it's like, no matter what goes on, like you're committed to just sitting there for that amount of time. So you can set a timer and just sit there in front of that blank page and commit to yourself. Like, I'm not going to look at my phone. I'm not going to get up. I'm not going to do anything else. For these 10 minutes, I'm going to sit here, and maybe I'll write. Maybe I won't write. Maybe I'll just sit here and ponder it, but I'm committing to doing nothing else other than this. Mm-hmm. And as you start writing, you might be surprised at what comes out of it. And maybe that's something that was already in your kind of subconscious mind, but you're just giving it the space to come up and sort of bubble up to the surface. Or maybe you're receiving some fucking insight and wisdom from some outside source that's being sort of channeled through your writing. Either way, wherever it comes from, giving yourself that space to allow that message to come up, I think, is really fucking powerful. Okay. So maybe that could be the next thing that you try. Like, don't go to Peru and do ayahuasca. Just get a blank piece of paper. It's a lot easier. See if you can start there.
No, okay, cool. Thank you. I'm actually going to start doing that because I think writing could be very therapeutic, and it probably is. All right, nice, awesome. All right, I got my little goal I got to do now. I'm going to get a nice little journal. All right, man. So before I feel like, well, first of all, we spoke about a lot of great things. We spoke about jiu-jitsu, your retreat, the spirituality, ayahuasca, etc. I think that's very powerful, and especially for any of my listeners here that maybe never delved in it, I bet you now they're interested. They're probably Googling all this stuff right now. Like, I'm going to Google Ram Dass, right? Ram Dass?
Yeah, Ram Dass.
Yeah, I'm going to look at some of his YouTube. I hope he's on YouTube. But before we go, right, just give a recap. What's Flowstate? Where is it? Dates, and maybe like website or Instagram or whatever you got. Where can you be found?
For sure, man. So Flowstate Jiu Jitsu Retreat, the world's first plant medicine infused Jiu Jitsu camp. Think of it as a wellness summit for mind, body, and soul. It's happening in Tulum, Mexico. So you would fly into Cancun. Super easy flight from New Jersey, by the way. It's like 3 hours. It's cool. It's pretty cheap. So the info is at Becoming Om. So becomingom.com/Flowstate. That's like our company for all the plant medicine stuff. You can also check it out on Instagram, David Z BJJ. Awesome. Spots are still open for the camp from August 11th through the 17th. It's going to be a mix of gi and no gi. We're going to use plant medicine, train jiu-jitsu, eat dope food. We're going to explore Mayan ruins. We're going to swim in cenotes. We're going to eat tacos. It's going to be a good time. So August 11th through the 17th, becomingom.com/Flowstate or David Z BJJ on Instagram.
Oh, did you cut out?
I don't know. Maybe.
Oh, perfect. We went an hour and 8 minutes, and that was the first cutout. But it's all good. It's good. You said Becoming Flowstate, and then that's where it cut out.
Becomingom.com/Flowstate or David Z BJJ on Instagram.
Awesome. Cool. You have any other last thoughts that you want to give? It doesn't have to be about the retreat, just anything in general, anything we spoke about before we wrap up here?
I would say, like, if you're someone who just listened to this and, like, you have no, like, if you've not experienced any of this stuff, like, you don't meditate, you don't fuck with, like, mushrooms at all, I probably sounded like a crazy person for most of this conversation. But I think, like, I get to, like, go off the deep end like that because I spent the first part of my life in, like, the normal material world. Like, I'm a doctor of physical therapy, right? Like, I learned how to heal people's tendons and muscles and shit first. And then it was through doing that, I realized, like, oh, my favorite clients are actually the ones that I talk about this stuff with. My favorite client ever came to me with a groin injury. We spent more time working on his depression and anxiety than we did working on, like, exercises. And he got so much fucking better in every aspect of his life because of that. And so that's really what prompted me to, like, kind of go more down this end of the spectrum. So I don't know, just, I guess, keep an open mind, like, dip your toes in this stuff. Definitely don't come to Peru as, like, your first step, but, like, try meditation, try to journal, like, check that out. Get into praying if that's your thing. Like, I've started praying. It's actually kind of awesome. check out Ram Dass lectures. There's another guy named Alan Watts who you should definitely check out. So I guess moral of the story is like, you don't have to fucking dive into the deep end with this stuff. You can dip your toes in and just kind of see how the water feels and see if it's for you.
Awesome. Great, man. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for a really cool conversation and sharing. Whenever you're back in Jersey, we're definitely going to link up. We'll do our shit. I'll keep in touch. I'm gonna look at some Ram Dass videos and I'll probably be hooked. But right, dude, man, good luck with not good. Well, I'm sure it's going to be awesome. You already have the first one sold out. Second one, there's a couple spots left. Have fun, dude. And I think you're doing a really great thing because, like I said, you're in the beginning stage. You put it out there in the universe and you said a really powerful thing. You want to make the world a better place. You want to sort of save the world to an extent. And that's not crazy at all. That it's just one little step at a time. And I think through this retreat, you're going to have a big impact, man.
Well, thank you, dude. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited to keep doing this. I feel like I'm kind of hitting my stride with like what I was put on this earth to be doing. So it's just a matter of like putting the work in every day and keeping on this path. So thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Hell yeah, man. All right, folks. Well, you heard it here from David, episode 79. Go to becomingohms.com/flowstate. I got it right.
Nailed it.
Check it out. Definitely want to go. I think if you're definitely doing this in the future, I'm definitely going to heavily consider that for sure.
Hell yeah, man.
And hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. Have a great night.